Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, the tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. This is kind of a big day. We've got somebody that's from and living in Brazil, so that's kind of cool. It'll be the first time I've interviewed somebody that's in Brazil, so we're going to chat a little bit about that. But let's first get to know Mikael Castro. He is the country manager for Brazil for Abercrombie Kent DMC. Mikael, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here.
Thank you, Jason. Very nice to be here and very nice to partake in this podcast.
Yeah, we're going to have a great conversation. And did I get that right? Were you born and raised in Brazil?
I was born and raised until I was 5 in Brazil. So yeah, that counts, I guess.
All right. Well, very cool. Well, let's get into that because we're going to chat a little bit about Brazil. We're going to obviously chat a little bit about Abercrombie and Kent, and we're going to chat a little bit about DMC, what that's all about. But before we do that, I did want to kind of dig into your past and your history and figure out how did you get from where you were to where you are now? So should we start at the age of 5?
Sure, we can start at the age of 5. That's a good place. Why not?
Or sooner if you want. If you remember it.
At the age of 5, we moved to the United States. Both my parents and my brother and sister to Washington, D.C. And it was, one of those moves where, okay, we're going to go for 6 months for a job. A temporary job that my parents had, and 6 months, went to 16, 20 years. So it was a lifetime. Well, not quite a lifetime, but, my entire childhood, let's just put it that way. My parents ended up working for Conservation International. So it's a, large environmental NGO in Washington, D.C. And that was very formative to my background in, sustainability and ecotourism. And my dad is absolutely passionate about travel. And so that as well, really impacted how we were brought up. And so both conservation, travel were part of my childhood.
So let's dig a little bit more into that. You said that he was passionate about travel. I take it before he ever left Brazil. Was he already into traveling and exploring, or was this something that came along kind of after you'd moved to the U.S.?
Yeah, no, good question. Dad was always passionate about travel. He's a photographer and a journalist by trade. And so he always had a passion of traveling the world and taking amazing photos. And that's what he did. Even working at Conservation International, a lot of his job was about communicating using visual, media, so photos, to help conservation messages get across throughout the world. And so he married that very well. And of course, being raised in that household, along with my mom, who also worked with him in that same sort of international communications department of Conservation International, I was raised sort of, with this tremendous wonder of the cultures of the world.
Very cool. And at what point did you actually start to travel? Were you traveling with them for any of these projects they were working on, or were you able to go explore and have kind of vacations, or what did that look like as you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, my parents had this philosophy that, the best investment in the childhood education was, yes, of course, a university, but more than that, it was traveling. So we never had, a fancy car, all the lavish sort of day-to-day amenities that you might have growing up, but we did invest in family vacations, and we were very serious about it. It was, if we had more than a week off at school, it was a family vacation, and my parents were very serious about, okay, we're going to go visit Greece, so study about it, learn about it, and in fact, in some points, we even had to do sort of internal reports with my parents, about what we traveled, what we saw, what were the best elements, what we learned. And it was actually really, really formative to learning about people all around the world.
This is all starting to make sense to me, Mikael. I mean,
Yeah.
I can I can see why you're doing the type of work you're doing now, and I've spoken with quite a few different people that have totally different backgrounds. Some of them grew up traveling, and others, their parents never took them anywhere. It was like it was just something that they weren't able to provide, and then people wanted, that's why they wanted to go do it, because they weren't able to. But it sounds like something that you were just brought up with.
Yeah, and it's something where I think not just about learning about other cultures, but you learn about yourself as well, and it
Hmm.
gives you this tolerance of being in uncomfortable situations, eating uncomfortable food, sleeping in different beds. So it's just it sort of ups that tenacity scale as you grow up, which I think is very, very useful nowadays.
Well, and you mentioned two siblings, right?
Yes,
So
I
I'm
have an older
imagining
brother
the
and older sister.
I'm imagining the family of five taking some of these trips. When you speak about kind of overcoming some adversities and some discomfort and stuff like that, I imagine a family of five in Greece, probably a lot of great things come out of it. But some of those great things are learning how to deal with people that you're traveling with, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely, and of course, we were always making sure to sort of have value in our trips. In other words, not overspend, because we did invest a lot. My parents invested a lot in these trips, so. Certainly, it was a smaller rental car than we would probably enjoy. So the three
Yeah.
kids crammed in the back, and you can imagine sort of the type of stories. In fact, we made sure to make the most of every moment we had in country. We're sort of those types of travelers. So my parents like to get to the sort of the attraction early, as soon as it opens. In some cases, before it opens. I remember visiting a castle in the UK, in England, where we got there, of course, before it opened. We were there by something like 7:30 or 8, and it only was going to open by 9:30. Um, and so, of course, my dad decided, you know what? Nobody's here at the door. Let's just climb the wall. We'll visit. And that's exactly what we did. We visited the castle, some medieval castle, before it opened, and sort of just strolled out. The security guard, when we walked out, was like, were they here before? Huh? He was just confused. It was fine.
That's very cool. And your siblings, you mentioned they're older. I'm curious, kind of two parts. One is, were they as enthusiastic as you are, or were like I'd love to almost have this conversation with your siblings as well, and understand how that impacted them. Are either of them working in tourism and adventure travel now, or how did that impact them?
Sure. No, they took different paths, in fact, but very, very also inherited certain aspects of both my mom and my dad. My brother, for example, is a video producer and editor in New York, and so he took that sort of photography side from my dad. Yeah.
Okay, that's very cool. And so, what did you end up going to school for? Because you mentioned one of the investments was university. So, I'm curious, what was your formal education like?
So, after traveling, it was probably 50 different countries or 40 some in sort of through high school, which was incredible. I said, well,
Yeah.
of course, I'm going to work with the cultures of the world. So I went to university to study anthropology. And,
Hmm.
I was thrilled to sort of dive deeper into, what are the different cultures of the world and how they developed, and then I soon figured out that an anthropologist is a very tough profession to have. So that was my undergraduate degree at the George Washington University in Washington D.C. And a few years after that, I figured out, what, the best way to get around the world isn't necessarily anthropology, and the best way to sort of figure out people around the world is in fact tourism and hospitality,
Mhm.
and that's where I started to dive into the tourism industry.
When you say anthropology was kind of I don't remember the exact word you just used, but a tough thing. It wasn't, I mean, what was it that makes an anthropology degree tough? And how did your parents, were they supportive of anthropology, or was this just an idea you came up with? Or
It's a good question. I wonder what was going through their head when I decided my major, but certainly they were very supportive of the university process and in general. They probably weren't quite sure what profession I was going to take on. Essentially, you don't have many choices as an anthropologist. You either become a professor, or you go live in the Amazon tribe and write a book about it. Essentially, write an ethnography. But most of those ethnographies have been written by incredible anthropologists, and I think that today's world is in how we explore different cultures is a lot done and can be explored through incredible travel experiences.
yeah, absolutely. I had a feeling you might say that when you mentioned anthropology was tough. I was kind of extending into it's a tough degree to get a job with.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. I mean, tourism sounds like a perfect fit, and I can imagine your parents. So when you switched into tourism, did that? I mean, were they supportive of that, or what were their thoughts? Do you know?
Oh no,
Because it seems like a
absolutely
natural
supportive,
fit.
and in fact,
Yeah.
it wasn't. And it wasn't just tourism. I was very much in, also involved in the conservation aspect of
Hmm.
their, lifestyle, not just their work, but their lifestyle. And so, naturally, I went into more of ecotourism. And I started working with the International Ecotourism Society, which was also based in Washington, D.C. at the time, and then that's where really the world opened up. And I started to organize international conferences on ecotourism and sustainable tourism. And I got to know so many incredible people from all corners of the world that were creating companies, leading trips, building eco lodges that were at the forefront of what this world of ecotourism was coming to.
Very cool. And how did you get from that job to being with Abercrombie and Kent in Brazil?
Well, that's yeah. There was a journey there. At one given moment, I decided to drop everything, and it was because my dad had decided to go on this incredible expedition, and he was looking for a travel partner. And at first, he said, hey, I want to travel through Africa in a Land Rover. And I said, good luck, Dad. I have a job. I have a girlfriend. I have an apartment. I'm doing quite fine. You go do that. And later, uh, I did some reflection, and I thought, what an incredible opportunity, both professionally and mostly personally, to really sort of take. And it's one of those moments where you never know what's going to happen if you don't take it. And so I didn't want to have any regrets. So I went to my girlfriend and I said, you know what, if you want to take care of the apartment, I'm going to be gone for a bit. And I left my job and decided to leave the apartment. Leave the. I was distant from the girlfriend. I didn't necessarily leave her, and embarked on this 9-month expedition with my dad in a Land Rover from South Africa all the way to the northern border of Sudan with Egypt. And then we drove all the way back down to South Africa for the 2010 World Cup that was going to be hosted there. That was hosted there.
Wow, so many questions. I don't know how personal you want to get, but the girlfriend at the time, walk me through a little bit more of that, as
That
much as you're
was
comfortable with it.
that was tough. That was tough. It was probably, well, certainly the hardest thing to decide to do was the impact with the girlfriend because it's someone I love,
Yeah.
and
Did she even like to travel? Did she
she
get
loves
it?
to travel, but she's definitely more homey than me. Let's
Okay.
just put it that way. And I'll cut the story relatively short. When I came back. It was not easy, and it was different. I found, that girlfriend to be someone completely different, and completely changed for the better. In fact, our relationship in the beginning was very much uneven. She was, more dependent on me, on the apartment that I owned and, or rented. And when I left, she had to take care of those things, and sort of stand on her own 2 feet and figure out her job. And she lost a couple jobs and had some serious challenges. Discovered yoga, became a
Hmm.
yoga instructor, which is, one of her professions today. And when I came back, I found a much stronger woman, and I fell in love all over again. And happy to say we're married. And it's been
Wow.
something like 18 years now, and have two wonderful girls together.
That's a very cool story. I'm curious, if I were to ask her, how did you come back different after 9 months? Because you mentioned how she changed, but I have a feeling that you probably changed a little bit as well.
Yeah, well, you're gonna have to do a podcast with her. But yeah, no, I did change, and I think it's when you're changing so much in terms of traveling. So every day we were sleeping somewhere different. Essentially, we were on the road. Everything around us was changing. And so what happens is your reference to yourself becomes stronger. So you
Mm-hmm.
get to see yourself more in the mirror and understand who you really are. And I think that's one of the beautiful things of travel is when you change all the setting around you, you sort of provoke this internal reflection of, well, who are you really? Who are you to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot of what the journey was about, in Africa personally.
And I'm sure there was a lot around traveling with your father, spending 9 months with your father, going through that. And that's something we discuss in tourism is family travel and the dynamics and all these things. And it's connection. I believe, for me anyway, this type of travel is really about connection, maybe with self, like what we just discussed, but also your traveling companions, people in these other communities, the guides that you interact with, or just the people that you meet along the way. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was incredible to travel with my dad. I mean, yeah, of course, you have tough moments and great moments at the same time. Uh, for one, I think I learned a lot in his way of a journalist, of interacting
Mm.
with everyone at every opportunity and learning from them. Whether it's asking tons of questions to the local guide, or interviewing someone, or just sparking up conversation at a cafe and learning that the person's a journalist, and then that journalist interviews us, and all of a sudden we're in the local paper. I mean, all these
Hmm.
incredible situations come up when you open conversation. And my dad is incredible at that. So I learned a lot about that. But we had hard moments as well. In Uganda, he in fact got malaria, and that was
Mm.
really tough. He only sort of felt it as we crossed the border into Rwanda, and I started to notice that he was not doing very well. The same day we were seeing the gorillas, I said, "Uh oh,
Mm.
this is going to be an issue. We're up here in the mountains, in the middle of the rainforest, of the impenetrable forest of Bawindi, and Dad, I think, has malaria." And so we ran to the hospital, got him a test, and it was negative. Because malaria does that. It has these waves of sort of false negatives.
Hmm.
And so we continued the trip, until I noticed he wasn't responding anymore. He wasn't switching. We would always switch. We had one rule: switch drivers every hour. Throughout the entire trip in Africa, and he wouldn't respond when I said, "Hey, Dad, are you going to drive today?" And nothing. So I rushed to the hospital, and lo and behold, we did another test. It was positive, and thankfully, we were able to buy the malaria medicine, which was incredibly affordable, because I only had a couple dollars left of local currency in Rwanda, and it was less than $1. So I bought him one, and I bought myself one, because the likelihood of me also getting malaria in a few days was pretty high. But
Yeah.
it was a few days to sweat it out and get through it. But it's incredible how impactful that disease is all through Africa and the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know why I'm coming up with this right now, but I've heard we're going to change subjects here, just not really change subjects, but change direction. I'm staying in Medellin, Colombia right now, and I noticed at one point, man, there's a lot of mosquitoes here all of a sudden. And I learned that there's an organization out there breeding mosquitoes that have the something about them genetically, or they carry some sort of bacteria or something like that, basically the mosquitoes with malaria aren't able to reproduce with them or something. It's like release more mosquitoes that are malaria avoidant on some level in order to kind of overwhelm the ones that can carry it. And is
Yep.
that just because we
That's something we're
mentioned,
doing here in Brazil as well. But there are
okay,
all sorts of efforts, and there are a few different diseases that are mosquito borne. So to me, I love all wildlife, all species in the world, but mosquitoes, those are the only ones I think I could do without.
yeah, well, I've had dengue. My son has had dengue traveling with me. And yeah, so there's a few things out there that make the mosquito a likely target for our efforts to influence the environment just a little bit. So, okay, so at what point during that trip to Africa did you start seriously thinking about, okay, what am I going to do when this is over? And what kind of thoughts were you having?
Sure. No, and let's get to Brazil. So essentially, I came back from Africa and I did a few more things, but was certain that my path was in hospitality and in tourism. And 2013 was sort of coming around, and I knew that we had the World Cup in Brazil 2014, and then the Olympics game in 2016. So I said, you know what, I'm you know, both Brazilian American, well traveled. I love tourism. Let me get a master's degree in business for tourism and go work in Brazil right before the Olympic Games and the World Cup. And that's exactly what I did. And that's when I started working for sort of the DMC world in Brazil. And that started back in 2013.
So is that because you're also a sports fan? Or did you just see the influx of tourism to Brazil and just thought, hey, that'd be a good time to
Always,
join?
it was mostly the timing opportunity. I mean, I love the World Cup and the Olympic Games, but not tremendous, sports fanatic. But it is the opportunity where the world sort of shines a spotlight on that particular country, and I figured, what better opportunity to take to sort of leverage my knowledge of Brazil, my knowledge of the U.S., and this wonderful new business degree in tourism. So let's go.
I'm curious, were you considering, like when you were younger, maybe a teenager, did you ever think, yeah, someday I'm moving back to Brazil?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I don't know, Brazilians have this. We have this. Most people do, but this tremendous passion for our country. Brazil is an incredible country with this unique identity. Whether you're from the south of Brazil, the north of Brazil, everybody identifies extremely sort of Brazilian, right? You have other countries in the world where you have different ethnicities and subgroups and subcultures, but Brazil is very united. We're the only sort of Portuguese speaking country in all of Latin America, and so we have this tremendous identity around our language, our sport of football, soccer, of course, the music throughout Brazil. So there's this national identity, which I've had always as a child. Throughout the years as we were growing up in the U.S. In the summers, we would go travel somewhere fun like Africa or Indonesia, but half of the summer we would spend back in Brazil, and so that really
Okay.
sort of cultivated this national identity that I have as a Brazilian. I consider myself first Brazilian, then
All right.
American, and then third French. In fact.
Okay. And well, I guess we got to touch on that. Why French?
Oh, it's just. Oh, I mean, if I get into the heritage of my family and sort of just start drawing it out, I think it would take the rest of the podcast. But let's
Okay.
just
Okay.
go. We have
There's a family
we
connection.
there's a family. My grandmother on my father's side, he was
Okay.
born in Rome. My mom born in New York. I mean, it's all over the place. But it gives me that sense of being part of this, being a global citizen, if you will.
Yeah, no, you're right. I spent quite a bit of time in Colombia, and I meet people here all the time that ask me, where I'm from, and well, okay, I'm from the U.S., but and then I say soy paisa, So the region around Medellin is, they're paisas that live here, and I'm soy paisa. I'm paisa in my heart. I'm a paisa from the United States, but I connect with the culture, and I have that sense of this is home, so I can see how that can happen. And I don't have any family connections to Colombia, but I've got an emotional, heartfelt connection to Colombia, and so I can appreciate that.
And
How
and
about
and
your
that's
wife?
sort of how I feel about being a carioca. So I've been here in Rio for it's now going to be 11 years, and I wasn't born in Rio as a carioca. I was born in São Paulo, but I can certainly identify to with some of the lifestyle that Rio has, and to me, what shines about Rio is its natural beauty. I see Rio as this playground of places to explore on the weekend, whether it's mountain biking in the Tijuca forest or going stand up paddleboarding on the lagoon or out in the ocean. Or in fact, seeing whales. It's incredible the opportunity to interact with nature here in Rio, and I think it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. So I love living here.
I think we need to go a little further on that because I'm curious. I believe that a lot of people that haven't been to Brazil, they have a very clear picture of what they imagine Rio de Janeiro being all about. And I suspect that the picture I've never been to Rio. I've been to Brazil, but I've never been to Rio. So I'm curious, what are the surprises that people have? Maybe clients that you're working with, or outbound tour operators when they come visit to do fam trips the first time. What are the big surprises that they come away with after
I'll
visiting Rio?
very excited to answer that question. But first, I'm going to turn it back to you. What is the connotation of someone of Rio for someone that hasn't been? What are the few words? Give me like three words that come out when you think of Rio.
Beaches, bikinis, and trying to think of something with a B, but just parties.
Yeah.
That's my view of Rio. It's like I don't think of it as a place that would be a good fit for me, but I'm also very very open minded.
Right.
And I'm
But
much more open minded than most people with my background. So yeah, what do you think?
well, I think that's exactly it, and a lot of people have that same connotation, right? It's football, beaches, bikinis, samba, carnival. Those are the words that come out, and of course, yes, Rio has a lot of that. But to me, Rio is a lot more, nature, beauty, ocean, rainforest, incredible landscape, friendly people, and those are the elements that we often, have as sort of feedback from guests that experienced Rio and said, "Wow, this is incredible! I had no idea Rio was this beautiful. I had no idea you could see monkeys, just in the backyard, or go climb on waterfalls just 20 minutes from the hotel of Copacabana." So those are the elements that people really get surprised about, whether it's going sailing on the bay, or even whale watching, which it's now whale season. So I've been very excited about the humpback whales that are along our coastline. And there are many different sort of adventure experiences that you can have in the outdoors of Rio. Rio is a very outdoorsy city in general.
So what I hear you saying is, if somebody's never been to Brazil, maybe hasn't even been to Latin America, but is really into the ecotourism, the nature part of it, maybe the culture. I know there's a lot of culture there. Everything you've just mentioned, it sounds like if somebody just said, "I'm just going to go to Rio and spend 2 weeks in Rio," can they incorporate a big majority of the things that they might want to see in South America right there in Rio, or is it always like, no, you should spend a few days here in Rio and then go to Amazonas or some other place?
I mean, that begins a whole different conversation of
I know.
Brazil as a whole, which I think is interesting, Jason, because a lot of people ask me the question, well, how long does it take to visit Brazil? And I have to throw it back to them and say, well, how long does it take to visit the 48 continental states? It's the
Yeah.
same geographical size. It's huge. Brazil is a tremendously big country, and there are lots of different places to see. So, of course, Rio is one of those must see cities. and experiences. But so is, Iguazu Falls, which is, I think, a must, a beautiful force of nature between Brazil and Argentina. But as you mentioned, the Amazon, Salvador, the Pantanal, and I think what sort of drawing us back to the conversation of a DMC, and why I really sort of dug my heels in here is because I noticed that everybody had this very shallow connotation of what Brazil was like, right? Rio and Iguazu Falls, and then that's it. Or at most, Rio, Iguazu Falls, maybe the Amazon. But to me, Brazil is so much more. It's there's so many more opportunities to have interactions with nature, with wildlife. So with Abercrombie and Kent, we set up the Marco Polo journeys, which is this incredible trip from the Amazon to the Pantanal, which is one of the only places in the world where you can see jaguars in the wild. And then you end in Iguazu Falls. So you don't even go to Rio. You can as an extension, but it's a whole different itinerary where you're going beyond sort of the beaten path. And of course, we have other opportunities to explore history and culture in Salvador, which to me is the heart and soul of Brazil, where you see the music, the heritage, all sort of come together in telling the story of Brazil's history. So it just goes on and on. The different, and that's why I think there's a tremendous future in sustainable travel in Brazil.
Yeah, very cool. I can see the look on your face. Our listeners maybe aren't able to see your face right now because they're just listening to a podcast, but I can see your eyes light up. This is not like somebody who, okay, I want to work in tourism. Where's the hot place? Oh, there's a couple sporting events coming up. I should go there because there's going to be a lot of business there. I can tell you're super, super passionate about this. And I just enjoy that. So I just want to mention that for anybody that's listening to this. I don't know the answer to my question, so I'm going to ask you. I feel like maybe I should, but why Marco Polo? What's the connection between Marco Polo and Brazil?
It's just one of the sort of brand itineraries that we have, sort of the group of products that we have with Abercrombie and Kent in the United States. It's more of the explorer type of itinerary, right? A little bit off the beaten path, as you will. So that's why we put it in sort of that product line. It's not one of your regular luxury small group journeys, which we have as well with Abercrombie and Kent in the U.S. But that's more of your standard itinerary, right? So I'll get into that. That's exploring São Paulo, and then from São Paulo we go to Salvador, and you get to see sort of the history and the culture of Brazil through song, through food. And then Iguazu Falls, which is definitely a must. And then, of course, in that itinerary, we end in Rio. So it's a little bit more of scratching the surface. It is a full Brazil itinerary, but that's sort of just the Brazil 101, if you will. And then after that, you have to go to the Amazon. You have to see the Pantanal. You have to go further up north to Lençóis Maranhenses. I don't know. Have you ever heard of that place?
Lençóis Maranhenses?
Yes.
No.
Okay, look
Tell
it up.
me more.
Maybe we can add it in the notes of how you spell it.
Put something in the show notes. Okay.
Yeah, but Lençóis Maranhenses is a national park in the northern part of Brazil, in the state of Maranhão, and it's basically sand dunes with freshwater lagoons in between.
Oh, okay.
Incredible landscape, beautiful place to go on a vacation. And what we're seeing is, people that in luxury travel, right? People that want to go a little bit off the beaten path, they want to have a sense of place. They don't want to necessarily fly and flop. Some do, but we cater to the ones that don't want to fly and flop into a resort, that want to have a little bit more of a transformative travel experience. So think about going to Lençóis Maranhenses, where you have these incredible sand dunes with freshwater lagoons, with a family with teenagers that you're going to be in the sun. Yeah, you're going to be in the sand, but it's about a 4x4 adventure. It's about sandboarding down on the lagoon into or down the sand dune into a lagoon, or zip lining it, or driving UTVs all up and down it. So there are many different sort of adventure options, and people hardly know that this exists in Brazil. And when I figured that out, I said, oh gosh, I have to be in this space. I have to do my part in sharing these amazing experiences that Brazil has.
Yeah, I actually, now that you've described it, I did meet it. I was in Africa for a Adventure Travel Trade Association show and met an operator from the area, and she had shown me some photos, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's very cool and different. Just it's different than something you're going to see in most places, which is very cool. So I'm curious. I'm curious about a lot of things. One thing I did want to touch on, I want to come back to real quick, was your wife, like picking up and moving to Brazil. Was her family have Brazilian history, or was this just a totally different change for her? What was that like
No, that's a good question. She's also
from your
Brazilian.
perspective? Okay.
She's also Brazilian, and so it was a good move for her as well. We were sort of settled and ready to be unsettled again, living in the U.S. So we had projected, let's move somewhere abroad. And this opportunity came up for Brazil. And at first she arrived here in Rio, was like, all right, I'm gonna teach English or do something. And I said, no, don't teach English. You're a yoga instructor. Do that. And I said, take the time to sort of develop the relationships it needs. And then she became, the yoga teacher here of, lots of the famous celebrities, and did really, really well with that. And has also sort of loved living in Rio. And in fact, now, it's developed into a tremendous profession for her. She's now doing trainings for yoga teachers in the sort of the business of being a yoga instructor and really valuing that profession. So very proud of her and her trajectory. And, I think the courage of moving and just changing everything around is something very commendable. And, a lot of that comes from her.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you've got two daughters?
Yes, two wonderful daughters. They are both cariocas for sure, which means that they have a slight accent of the way that they speak in Portuguese. So Bella, who just turned 3, and Jolie, who is 6, going on to 7.
Wow, very cool. So what are maybe they'll listen to this someday, so I need to ask you, what are your dreams for them as far as working in something, travel or traveling around? I mean, what are kind of your ideas that you have in your head? I know, and I'm sure you're going to say, I want them to be happy, do whatever they want to do, but I've got kids as well.
That's a tough question, Jason. I didn't expect this one. So I'm definitely not prepared. We of course always want the best for them, for our children. And quite honestly, I reflect on this, frequently. And I think a lot of the world is changing today. So with the onset of artificial intelligence, with everything changing in the world in terms of how they are going to go through education, how they're going to deal with social media, how they're going to deal with artificial intelligence. I was thinking the other day, is my daughter even going to learn how to drive, or are all the cars going to be carless or motor
driverless?
Driverless? Sorry. So when you reflect on that, she's only 7, so we're talking about maybe 10 years. Okay, she'll probably learn how to drive, but how about the 3-year-old? I don't know. So it's hard to think about what it's going to be like when they're adults, and I keep coming back to personal connections with people around the world, and that seems to be sort of the most important, is learning how to interact with people from different walks of life. That's what travel to me is all about, is having that flexibility to understand someone that's different than you, that has different beliefs, that openness to drive dialogue with those people. That's why we get out of our comfort bubble and go explore in a different place of the world and actually have interactions with people. That's also what we want to create when people come and visit Brazil, is to have this authentic interaction with someone that's local, that maybe thinks differently. And that's okay. And that's how we all learn and grow, right?
Right. And it's so interesting, because I think if you think of the stereotypical parents, maybe in the US, I can maybe connect with that a little bit more. My parents were not stereotypical, but I kind of, I understand the culture a little bit that it's a lot of don't talk to strangers, which is pretty much I can stop there. It's this don't talk to strangers, stranger danger, all these things that we teach our kids. And I say we, I like to think I don't, but that we teach our kids as a society. And then you and I are having this conversation about going out and having dialogue and starting conversations and learning about people with different backgrounds and different histories and this and that. And obviously you grew up in that. I can't imagine your parents ever saying, don't talk to strangers. They might have tried to teach you some common sense about, don't talk to the guy that's drooling at the mouth and, dragging his knuckles on the ground. But I suspect they very seldom said to you, Mikael, quit talking to him or quit talking to her. And a lot of people were raised that way. And I suspect that, so I guess I just wanted to kind of comment on that a little bit. What thoughts come up for you?
Well, I think you've nailed it there, Jason. And what I see today from the DMC perspective, hosting guests in Brazil, and hosting luxury guests, in different places of the world, is that these travelers want interactions with local people. In fact, I think we're in a time now where people feel more lonely than they have ever felt before. And so when the luxury traveler has that leisure time to stop their work or give it a light pause, if you will, and go explore a different corner of the world, in fact what they're urging for, what they really want, is to be able to connect with someone. And so what I see the DMC, the tour operators' responsibility, is to create the conditions for true, authentic interactions with people, where people really get to share what it's like, what are the different opportunities that they have to be together. I'll give you an example and a story which moved me recently. We had a guest come and visit one of our philanthropy projects here in Rio, and this philanthropy project started with a personal connection that I had with my wife before we had our kids. We would go up to the Fijigal favela. It's one of those picturesque mountains, in the backdrop of Ipanema. And we would go up there for sushi. They have a really great sushi place. And then I would hear this young girl who was always drumming outside of the restaurant. She would drum first on buckets. And then she acquired some real samba drums, and every time we would go, there would be more kids that were around her and would ask her to teach them how to play. So of course I befriended her and developed a relationship and started to sort of follow and support her, and said, it'd be really cool if some of the guests could see you play. It's incredible what you do. And years, went by, and we started taking guests there, and she, just continued to flourish and dream. And she comes from a very tough background. Her mom was incarcerated. She never really had a dad. She was raised by her grandmother, who, never went through school. Everything indicated that she was going to be, have all the challenges of life, and could go in all the wrong directions. And through her willpower, also through a lot of these, inspiration of the connections with travelers that would come and visit her, she developed this little school, or big school now, of teaching local youth how to play these samba drums. And it's incredible. One guest recently visited her through our project, and was so inspired, so moved by everything that she's developed, that she just said, what can I do to help you? And Isis Maria, who her project Batucavide, she said, what, I dream of having a school, actual building where I can keep the drums, where I can teach the kids English. And our guest just said, all right, name, how much is it? I'll pay for it.
Wow.
And last time I was there, just a couple weeks ago, I visited the spot and was definitely moved to tears, when she told the story to guests that we were with. It was just like incredible how travel offers the opportunity to transform people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got tears in my eyes just listening to you, Mikael. So thank you for sharing that. That's and you're absolutely right. I imagine there's so many beautiful places in the world, but I honestly don't want to go there and see them by myself. You know, you can drop me in the most beautiful place in the world, and if I'm there by myself, I'm like, there's, it's almost like I can't share it. I can't. Well, I can't share the experience, and if I can't share it, then it's almost, for me, it's all about the shared experience. Sometimes that's with other travelers. So it might be other, might be guests if I'm leading a group trip, or might be people in my family I'm traveling with. But oftentimes it's the locals, because there's just so many interesting things to learn about and see with them, and it can just be a smile. I was in Bali, and I decided to walk home from this place I'd gone, just because I always see more things when I walk. And I found some little street food vendors and walked over, and there's this gal picking out some food, and I had no idea what I was looking at. So I just kind of communicated with her to, maybe she could tell me what she's eating, because if she likes it, I'll probably like it. So she helped me order a plate of the same food she was having, and I paid for her dinner, and she's like, no, she didn't want me to do that. And I said, no, it's a guide fee. You're guiding me. You're helping teach me about your culture. And so she was great, and she wanted to take a selfie with me. So we took the selfie, and then of course I took my phone. We took the picture, and in the picture on my phone, I could see her phone in her hand, and I could see the picture she had just taken of me and her on her phone. And just something about it, when I look at that picture and I can see on her phone the photo of her and I on the picture of her and I together, it was just something about that. And that was just a brief little interaction that left a mark on me. I don't know if it did on her. Hopefully I represented, the American tourist well. But I think these connections can be had if you put yourself in those places and get off the big buses, or the big cruise ships, where you're just traveling with a bunch of people that basically have a similar background as you. And it's just a matter of just getting off the bus, or getting, just connecting with people. It's super important. I think it's super important. And I know that that's exactly what you guys are really focused on doing, right?
Yeah, I think it's about sharing a meal. As you mentioned,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
many times, it's just facilitating that, being able to share a meal with someone that lives there, and let the conversation, take it where it goes. So we also facilitate those moments. I think that's part of it. There's so much that can be said about sharing a meal with someone local, or playing a soccer game. I have to say, soccer is one of the international connectors. Uh,
Yeah.
I bet that many families have the story to tell, where they were abroad. And the moment that the kids played soccer with the local kids was one of
Mm-hmm.
the highlights of their trip. And
Yep.
it's so true, because there's no language barrier. We're all humans at the end of the day. And soccer is soccer wherever, or football wherever you go in the world.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. My son was with me in Mexico, and we found a German couple that were running the Airbnb we were staying at. So their kids came out and went for a walk with Jackson, and they found some other Mexican kids, and they were all playing soccer. My kid can't play soccer. He's from the U.S. It's not a natural thing for him, but the connection was there, and it was just so much fun to see that. And everywhere I see that, either in my kids or other people, or just, the connections. And food, you're right.
Yeah.
Food is really powerful. Just sitting across from somebody, like, we talk about facilitating these experiences, and it's great to have the facilitation. And anybody that's listening to this that doesn't have somebody like, on your team to facilitate that, just literally just go somewhere and just find food, and just sit down as close to the food as you can, at a table that's big enough that someone else will come sit down with you, and the connection just happens. I've seen that so many times. In Malaysia, last time I was in Malaysia, sitting in this little soup kitchen, I think noodle place. I can't even remember what they call that type of thing, but just at a big group table, there are 20 people sitting there, and these guys across from me, this guy was like 20 and lived over in, I guess, Eastern Malaysia, so on a totally different place. and he'd been over there working on a date on a palm oil farm fixing tractors. And he'd been there for 3 months, and he was excited because he was going home the next day. So we were having this conversation about missing his family, and that was the first trip he'd ever taken outside of Eastern Malaysia, and just had this amazing conversation. And they got up to leave, and I shook their hands, and then probably 30 seconds later, the lady taps me on my shoulder and points at them and says, "They bought your lunch." And it's like, I'm 50. I had a 20-year-old kid sit across the table from me and tell me about his first trip, and I've been to 30 some countries, and not that that's a bragging thing, but it's like, for him to decide to buy me lunch, that was a connection, And so we got up and took the pictures before they left, and just to remind myself of the connection. But food is such a powerful one.
Food is, and I think, it's food, it's sports, but also the interaction with locals and guides included. It's a way of seeing, of having a steward for that particular destination or that environment, and that's something that we see often as well. When one of our guides presents the Amazon or the Pantanal, they are stewards of that biome, of that location, and they're presenting it also with the element of how these guests that are visiting can help protect it. And that's something that's super important to me as well, is making sure that with every visit, not only do we have, very few negative impacts, but that the net positive impact of every traveler is felt and seen in the local community, that, in the local environment as well. And few people realize this, but Brazil is a incredible destination for sustainable travel. The word sustainability in general has, people are using more regenerative travel, or ecotourism changed to sustainable tourism to regenerative, whatever you want to call it. To me, it's about traveling where you leave a positive impact, and I think Brazil is an incredible destination for that, because as a whole, the country is moving towards sustainability in a very general way as well. Uh, I'll just cite it like this: to think about Brazil's energy sources, right? Brazil today has anywhere between 83 and, I think it's most recent numbers, 93% of its energy comes from renewable resources. The country, the entire country, and we have a large country.
Yeah.
When you look at the global average, then you're looking at 25% of countries have renewable. 25% of countries use renewable resources, or 25% of the resources that they use are renewable. Let's put it that way. So that's the average, and Brazil has way above the average. In the G20, I mentioned this because the G20 meeting is coming up here in Rio in November, and this is one of the themes that Brazil wants to get out to the world, which is, we in fact are leading the way for the larger economies in the world of decarbonizing our economy, decarbonizing our general country. So to have in the 90s, in terms of the percentage of renewable resources that we use in our country is incredible. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as guests are choosing their destinations and they want to be sustainable. Look at how sustainable the country is itself.
Yeah. What's the larger? Is that mostly hydro? I'm just trying to guess. Is that mostly hydro, solar? What's the biggest sources of renewable?
Good guesses, Jason. Over 50% is hydro. So yeah, that comes from water power, if you will, dams. And then it's a good mix of solar and a lot of wind. We have a lot of wind farms in the northeastern part of Brazil, great kite surfing destinations. So they figured, why don't we put up some wind turbines here by the dunes, and some solar panels as well. And there you go. You have a lot of natural resources being generated.
Interesting. Do you feel like the typical Brazilian takes great pride in that? I mean, is that something like they're all kind of on board? Like, yeah, Brazil's really good about using this renewable resources, or is it something that most people just kind of are going to worry about? They're just dealing with their lives.
They're just dealing. I don't think they know. Few people, really put these numbers into perspective. That we are so forward in terms of the goals that most developed economies have in terms of decarbonizing their economies. We're way past those. But few people in Brazil really see that as, understand that or see that as a point of pride. We're just trying to get through the day by day. But there is tremendous pride in the natural resources that we have as a country, right? That many people know that the largest part of the Amazon is definitely in Brazil, and that we have five, the different biomes, the different sort of natural resources that Brazil has. Brazilians are very proud of those.
I'm curious about, so speaking about Brazilians, their pride, their awareness of the natural resources, and you were also speaking about facilitating connections, your tour leaders, your smaller tour operators, your partners, and your guides. What's the biggest challenge? No, I think where I want to go with this is the typical guide that is dealing with your clients. Did they get into guiding because it was the best job on the block as far as financial reward, or did they get into guiding because they're passionate about guiding? Or give me some kind of information about what the typical guide, what their background is, and why they're doing it.
That's a good question, Jason. We have local guides throughout Brazil, and many of them, I think, got into guiding because a lot of the language, right? Once you have that language ability of speaking English or Spanish, in the case of Brazil, you have that main skill set that gives you that opportunity in tourism. But to me, what we look for when identifying a good guide is someone that has that hospitality gene, right? Someone that not only is proud and knows how to tell a story and present their local destination, but they have that hospitality gene, which is, I like to be the host and to receive you in my destination, in my city, in my country. I think that is, a clear sort of common denominator through the guides. And particularly the resident tour directors, the hosts that really travel around Brazil with our guests. Those generally have very different backgrounds, right? And guiding is a complement. So we have a professional photographer, we have a doctorate in literature, in history, and diaspora of cultures. We have several different sort of professions, and they also have that hospitality gene. So they join all three and sort of lead trips throughout Brazil. And our guests always come back and say, what a wealth of knowledge, but also what a wonderful person to be with and to have as a host. And that's really, I think what makes the difference. There's this wonderful quote, which I know many people that probably listen to this podcast know, which is from Maya Angelou, right? People will forget what you saw. They'll forget what you said, but they won't forget how you made them feel. And that's what our guides really do, is to really help our guests feel the country, not just see the attraction or tell them about the historical facts, but you have to feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you don't have, I just think if you don't have that gene, I've never heard it called the hospitality gene, but I get it. And I think that trying to teach somebody to be a good guide, if they don't have that, oh man, they may logistically be very good. They may show up on time. They may drive the vehicle well. They may do a number of things. But if you don't have that hospitality gene, it's, well, a couple things. One is your guests probably aren't going to enjoy themselves as much. But number two, they're not going to enjoy it. Because if you don't have the hospitality gene, you're not going to want to work with clients. And
yeah, and the best guides really love what they do.
Yeah,
you're right.
So very cool. We've discussed so many things, and I know that we could come back and do many, many more episodes, probably do a whole series of episodes just on Brazil, the people, the different cultures. But I appreciate you coming on, sharing your personal story as well, because that's really, I think, what makes it different. We've discussed, connection, and that's what we're trying to create here is a connection. And I hope that some of our listeners feel a connection with you and will, make efforts to either reach out. I mean, you're a DMC, so you don't necessarily work directly with consumers, but I believe there's a lot of other people listening to the show as well, travel agents, tour operators, and other people that would have a very specific reason to reach out with you and connect with you. We'll have the link to the website in the show notes. And of course, you're all over social media. That's, is there anything else you'd like to share? Want to make sure that, any questions I forgot to ask, should have asked, or anything you want to make sure to share with our listeners before we wrap it up?
Jason, I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to be on this podcast with you and to share a bit of my story. I think we could go on for hours. So I'm gonna for the sake of time, I won't continue the conversation with extra tangents that we could go on. But I highly appreciate it. It's always fun to share a little bit of the background. From what creates, these travel companies. So I've listened to a lot of your podcasts before throughout, and they're always inspirational to understand how people get to where they are. So thank you so much for having me on, and look forward to listening to your next episodes.
Well, thank you for the beautiful words and encouragement and just sharing your time with us here today, and look forward to collaborating on more projects with you together. Thanks, Mikael.
Thank you, Jason.
All right. I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.